mode.
Helicopter, helicopter! Helicopter, helicopter!
Can you hear the sound? A helicopter.
Paracopter, paracopter, da passa sta nebra. Helicopter, helicopter!
Alrighty guys, the build that you've been wanting me to actually upload, it's a meme build. It is the Helicopter Sorceress. So yes, you will get off and start spinning around like a helicopter, and you can actually clear out things quite fast in the open world. And it's just kind of hilarious to see. People always laugh, and it's just a blast to actually play, but is going to be more of an off-meta build. If you're looking for like a meta build, I'm going to definitely recommend you guys to check either my Ball Lightning or my Fireball build, and I'll have those linked down below. But this is more for a fun build than anything, and Incinerate is actually one of the most underused skills, I would say, in the entire game. It's actually quite bad for many reasons. There's a reason why most build websites, if you go to like the Sorceress community tab on Mobalytics, you go to the D4 builds, you go to max roll, you look up the Sorceress, you look up Incinerate, and there's just nothing. It's just gone. And why is that? Why is this build seeing so less play than anything? And it's simply because the skill is probably broken / unintended in its design, because it doesn't work like a traditional damage over time skill, and it doesn't work as a direct damage skill. So there's a lot of things that do not work. Even when you get the unique, even when you get the item to have 20 bonus points with all of your things like Flame Scar, you still, with 20 points into the skill, have just significantly lower damage. But if you look at the actual numbers, like you go into the testing dummy, it doesn't actually seem that bad. Keep in mind, when you're doing ticks, it's usually going to be faster than like 1 a second. And here's just like an idea here, just so you guys can get an example of how much damage are you dealing. Like if you're seeing these ticks sometimes hit for like 400k, and you shoot out these additional embers for like anywhere from 50 to 100k if it crits. You can crit with it, and you can actually scale crit with this. Even though it's a damage over time build, the embers themselves count as a core skill, so you can run like the Esu's combo and get massive amount of crit with them if you wanted to. Now it's weird because fire is also scaled by getting crit strike damage, but the damage over time can't crit. So there's a lot of things that are absolutely backwards with this build, and it definitely needs some love and attention. So even though it looks like these numbers are quite high in my testing, when you actually play the game, you'll notice that the damage itself doesn't seem that good. And that is because you have to start activating your vulnerability, and some of the things require the target to be burning, but you can't just tag it like a normal skill, and I'll kind of explain that in a minute. So I know this one video has a lot of a longer intro, but I have to explain kind of that, you know, this build is not going to be necessarily as strong as other builds. Again, it's more for memes, and it's hilarious to play, but you can still clear out content. If you want to do Sigil 100s, I was doing on my live stream, it is absolutely painful if you're looking to do Sigil 100s. Again, this is not supposed to be a meta build, it's an off-meta build, it's more for fun. And I like to try out all the builds, and like I really try to push this skill to its limit. I mean, you can't deny, putting 20 points into skill, you'd think that, oh man, it's gotta be good. And there's a lot of problems with the skill, and there's a reason why no one plays it, and there's like no build guides on it. So, let's go ahead and start right off with the skills. So as far as the skills go, we're running Incinerate. Well, it's an Incinerate build. Then we're running Inferno. It groups up the enemies, and when an enemy dies and it pops with a fireball, and you get all these different fire walls to actually spawn in. It actually is quite nice to just have this Inferno skill. Then we play double of the armors here, just like you would normally play. So you have Flame Shield and then Ice Armor. You activate this, you can hold still and activate it. That's a huge downside with Incinerate, because it's a channeled skill that you actually have to like sit still if you want to get damage, because how it works is it ramps up in damage over time. This used to be a 4-second duration to get the max damage, but even if you hover over it, it shows like 100,000 plus damage, which is normally pretty high in terms of like the mouse over damage on the skill. It's still not good at all. But nonetheless, you do have to channel to get that bonus damage. So you have to hold still, and most things are just going to do damage to you. There's a giant like AoE on the ground. The game is not designed for you to hold still, but if you hold still, there was a buff in Season 2 with Inner Calm, because when you would spin around like a helicopter, what would happen before is it would actually remove your stacks of your Inner Calm, which is like crazy because you're not even moving, right? But that had gotten patched out in a patch notes. Most of you guys probably didn't realize it because no one plays this build. But it is a huge, massive buff to it, and that's kind of something that did change. And then we run Blizzard just to activate our ice, plus it slows things down, so it's okay. It's just another skill that you can easily replace. You can replace Inferno as well as Blizzard if you want to, and then we run Teleport just because, well, it's Teleport. Every single build plays it, and just so I can make the build kind of excel at what it does, which is kind of just clearing out health high. That's what it does relatively well, but you can do other things with it. You can do, I'd say, like Sigil like 70s, relatively comfortable. Once you start pushing higher, holding still is the main problem that this build has. It can, like I said, it's like not that bad for damage, but when you have to hold still to ramp up your damage, you're going to deal less damage because you can't hold still because there's a giant AoE that's going to explode. So that is one huge major problem. That's something that's not really fixable with the build. I think it'd be cool if while you are using your Incinerate, you can move kind of like Whirlwind. It's something that the build needs, because otherwise you just lose out on too much DPS when you start moving. Anyways, as far as the equipment goes, I'm going to mouse over the pieces of gear. If you have Shaco, obviously run Shaco, but Aspect of Disobedience can still be great in the helmet. You can look for things like Intelligence, Total Armor, Max Life, Max Mana. You don't really need cooldown reduction with this build because most of the time you want to hold still. And then we're running Rhyme and Infinite, so it can group up all the enemies and you get a little bit more damage with it. And then in our Calm, this thing is really great over here, and actually over here, what you ideally want, with this build, for some reason, Lucky Hit is just like super low. So what you want, instead of getting like primary resource, because that's something I usually tell you guys to go ahead and look for, with this, you just need to get Incinerate. That's kind of like the more important thing. And you don't need crit and you don't need attack speed. As far as I'm aware of, most of the channeled skills do not benefit off of attack speed. In this game, I've seen people say that it can actually proc faster, or it'll change your tooltip DPS. As far as I've tested, it has not, so I don't think attack speed is worth getting. So what are you going to get on here? Well, you can get things like Intelligence. That's not bad to get on this. Again, you can choose kind of whatever you want. You can get like all stats. It's very, very reasonable after you get the Incinerate, and then Intelligence would be like an okay thing to get. And there's, if you want to, you can get Fire damage over time. Now, the reason why I say you can get this is because the damage over time is still relatively like low in this build. Even when you have 20, I showed you guys you can do lots of damage. You can actually scale crit damage, so you can get the crit to actually do like okay-ish damage. And you can still get crit chance because the embers can actually crit that shoot off of the flame scar. So the gloves are really flexible after Incinerate. The ranks of it. And then you can run Tybalt if you want to, and I'm not even using it for resource. The main reason why I wanted to run Tybalt is so you can actually do damage with this, because for whatever reason, the scaling on this skill just doesn't seem like it's enough. I know it seems like we hit for like a lot of numbers, but the damage just simply isn't adding up. I don't know why the skill is designed this way, but try it out yourself. You could play like any variant of Barbarian hitting for like 100k, and it just like melts stuff for like a lot faster in like level 100 content, versus this, you're getting high ticks, but it has to like wait for that duration. If I just spin around and tag everything, sometimes, you know, most of the stuff will eventually melt, and the embers will then shoot out and they'll melt as well. But as far as like that damage over time, it's not like a really huge priority, and getting that extra X damage off the embers can actually help out more than the actual damage over time. It's kind of up to you if you want to play Amethyst, or if you want to go more of a crit build. It's an option here. And then I'm running Penitent Grease just so I can slow things down, because you are going to be within melee range, and it is more dangerous to play this build because, well, you have to sit still, and when there's giant AoEs that explode, unless you want to lower your damage, you're going to have to take that hit. And this kind of helps slow the enemies down. And on top of that, you get a little bit more damage. We're also running Flame Scar over here, so this is like the main thing that you get with it. It's so weird that you get Lucky Hit chance with fire damage, considering the Lucky Hit on this is absolutely terrible for the base of your Incinerate. And then we are running the Engulfing Flames over here, so this is going to give us extra burning damage once it reaches a certain amount. Like, you have more burn than they have HP, then you get a massive amount of burn damage. It's still relatively low. Like I said, the main problem with this is you'd have to actually apply the dot via, let's say, like a firewall, and at that point, it would just be a firewall build. So I wanted to make the build all about Incinerate, and in order for Incinerate to be good, you have to sit there channeling it. If you wanted to, in theory, you could go activate a firewall, and then you can start incinerating after. But I wanted to support the helicopter playstyle, because I made a couple TikToks with it. People loved it and were like, yo, I want the build. So I'm going to drop the build as, you know, you guys saw it. At the end of the day, firewall and incinerate are more meme builds, in my personal opinion. If you compare to like ball lightning, and these are on like completely different leagues, or even like ice shards. And then we're running configuration over here, so we get to increase the burning damage. Now with this, you don't really need too much resource gen. You don't need to get it like on every single piece of gear. Like, you don't need to get the lucky hit. However, it can help out with fireball, but you don't really need that much resource with this build to get up and running. So if you want to get other things, I can get like damage reduction from burning instead of this. Reduction from enemies that are burning, that can be okay as well. Getting all stats. These are all like optional, but if you can get maybe like 1 or 2 here or there with the resource gen, it's okay to get. That way you don't have to like proc your bolts, because you need to hold still in order for it to be good, but it does keep you active, so you can get that extra up to 40x multiplicative damage. Then tell Rosh is because, well, every single build must play this. It's just too much damage to lose out on. And then for my offhand, I am running the Edge Masters over here, so we can get extra damage when we spam our build. You can see I barely even lose like any mana. It's really, really good, and that's why you want maybe a couple things with resource, and it depends, like, you know, your rolls on your pieces of gear, or if you have Shaco, that can help out as well, and that way you can maintain extra bonus damage with this. Now, as far as our gems go, you can run Amethyst, or you can actually run Emeralds. If you want to run the one where you can get extra crit, that is totally another option. If you want to get Elementalist aspect, keep in mind, you're only going to be critting with the Embers, but the Embers are actually pretty decent. And again, I don't know why when I see some of these ticks that hit for like a huge number, it seems like the Embers, even though they'll hit for like 30 to anywhere from, it's more like consistency, like 50 to 100 if you scale, because I did try making a build that was more on the crit side with this, and surprisingly that one was pretty solid too. It's kind of up to you. It doesn't really matter. Maybe you happen to have a really good roll on this, or if you happen to have a good Engulfing Flames. Try them out. You can try out both and realize that the Incinerate is still not the best skill, but realistically, play either way in terms of the build, and you can have some fun. So as far as the Vampiric Powers now, let's go over that. So the most important thing is really running Bathe in Blood. So that drops a pool of blood. That pool of blood is going to actually deal no damage, but it's going to be able to give you a bonus of less damage taken, and you're going to get increased damage. There's only, I believe, 2 channeled skills in the game, with the exception of like Decompose on Necromancer, but let's not like use that for DPS anyways. And then the standard Prey on the Weak, and then a Curse Touch, because you need to apply vulnerability somehow. Then you can run Undying and Sanguine Brace. You don't really benefit too much off of crit unless you want to push the crit build, which is fine too, but it's just for extra survivability. You can also run Resilience if you want to in this department, but there's a few different options. But the only really important one is put Bathe in Blood. You don't really need Ravenous, because as far as I'm aware of, attack speed does not benefit off of the channeled skills in the game. In some Diablo games in the previous iteration, it would actually tick your things for faster, or you'd have faster activations. Maybe the Embers could activate faster. As far as I have done testing in terms of the DPS tooltip, doesn't seem to actually increase when you have extra attack speed. And then now that we've gone over the gear, let's go over the skill tree. So here is the skill tree. So we are going to be playing Fireball as well as Incinerate for our main sources of damage. So our enchantments, by the way, Fireball and Firewall. So when we kill something, there's going to be a fireball, it explodes, and that can actually do a little bit additional damage. And then also it helps out with the proc rate of Firewall, because this works off of a lucky hit. It seems to trigger quite often though after an enemy dies via Fireball. So you'll see sometimes that there are these flames, and it helps out a little bit against the bosses. And the reason why I like having it automated versus actually manually casting it is because Firewall will actually give us some bonus damage here. And then we're just putting 1.1ers, you know, the Flame Shield, the Ice Armor. You can put 1 point of Frost Nova if you want to as well. Then obviously Teleport, getting Shimmering. And then no points over here except for getting some extra survivability. And then over here with Firewall, we get increased burning damage. And we're going to have this Mage's Firewall, and that helps us out just a little bit, because what it does allow us to do is have the target be burning, and that will increase our DPS. And then we're just running Inferno here, and then we're running Fiery Surge, and we're running Combustion. Now, if you want to play Estus Ferocity, it doesn't really work too well, because getting increased like attack speed, which is something you could get, you can if you want to scale the crit version. So it's honestly up to you. What do you want to play? Do you want to get extra different bonuses depending on the amount of unique sources of burning that you apply to an enemy, meaning every single different like skill that it's applying the bonus burn, which actually does work quite well with a fire enchantment, but you can burn with Incinerate, and you can also burn with Fire Wall. It's just basically that 20x and the small damage, you can get like 24. And if you activate Flame Shield, sure, you can go like a little bit more, but don't expect to get a huge amount of bonuses with this thing. But you can run Estus Ferocity again, if it's kind of up to you. As far as the Paragon board here, I'm just going to mouse over it kind of quick. So we're running Elementalist in the first node, just so we can get all of the bonus non-physical. That will let us cap out on Frigid Fate to get that 30x multiplier. Then we're running Torch over here, getting more damage for the increased burning enemies that are nearby, and since you are going to be channeling. And I like running this with Rymance because it groups up everything, so you get a lot of targets. You just teleport in, sucks everything up. Really good stuff indeed. And then on the next board, we're running Searing Heat. and then we are running Territorial, because you're going to suck everything in. And then we're going to run Enchanter over here on Frigid Fate. We want to make sure we grab this. Non-physical will cap us out, so we get our 30, and also the Talrasha Ring helps out. And then we are running Flame Feeder over here with Burning Instinct, so we get extra damage to burning targets. Now, the unfortunate thing with Incinerate is you can't just tag all the targets like you would normally with a dot build. It has to be actually kind of hovering over there. It's only really more useful for bosses when you're just sitting there getting that dot until a fire wall happens, then you can keep on spinning around. That's why the build kind of works well in the helicopter. And it's so weird that fire is scaling off of this, because like your burn damage is increased by your crit strike damage, but your burn damage isn't going to be critting. It's like, well, was this design? I don't know. But that's going to go ahead and be the build, guys. Play it. Let me know what you think. I think it's hilarious. It's more of a fun meme build than anything, but you guys wanted it, and I'm here to deliver. Again, take it with a grain of salt that this build is probably not going to be anywhere near meta until maybe another season when they actually fix this build, because it genuinely feels untested for the actual game state. Again, test it out yourself. The embers actually seem to do more damage than the actual dot, even though it ticks for a higher numerical value. But there it is. There's a rank 20. And again, it's just super fun just to see all of these things just kind of just melt as you just spin around like a crazy helicopter. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like. If you're new here, hit subscribe to the bot, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace out. And also, the build will be linked down below.